This Gochujang glazed beef and vegetables recipe is a high-volume, easy meal prep dish to help you stay full for longer. It features cabbage, carrots, peppers, and onions, which are low-calorie options for adding volume to your meals. Each serving has 572 calories and 42 grams of protein, and seeing as how it is a basic stir-fry, it's also incredibly easy to prep. That makes it a great choice for if you're new to meal prepping. Here's how you do it. First thing to do, prep some rice. For this recipe, you'll need 3.75 cups or 563 grams of cooked rice. Depending on what kind of rice you use, that's probably somewhere between a cup and a half to 2 cups of dry rice. I always do 320 grams of dry rice, and anything extra gets converted to fried rice or used in other meals throughout the week. Wash it and then get it cooking. Next, I prepared all of my vegetables. Earlier this week, I bought a head of cabbage and I shredded it up to store in the fridge. That's what I used in this recipe. You'll need 8 ounces or 227 grams of shredded cabbage for this recipe. Now, if you don't want to buy the full head, you can buy the pre-shredded stuff in a bag and use that instead. It'll be a little bit easier but more expensive. Next, I took one medium-sized green pepper or 150 grams worth, cut the seeds from the center, and then sliced it into thin strips. I did the same thing with one small yellow onion or 125 grams worth. Remove the root and the shoot, cut it in half, and then into thin slices. Optionally, you can include some green onions for garnish on your final dish. Take about 3 green onions and cut them into small pieces. Save the green parts for garnishing and add the whites to your pile with the other onions. Next, you'll need 2 medium carrots, or in my case, 1 big one, or 150 grams worth. I prefer to cut these into ribbons using my vegetable peeler by going down the length of the carrot. The super thin pieces don't require much cooking, and they incorporate nicely into the stir fry. Once I get the full carrot processed, I pass a knife through them a couple of times to break them down into smaller pieces. You can also buy pre-shredded carrots from the store if you wanted a lazier approach. Lastly, we'll need 1 tablespoon or 15 grams each of minced garlic and minced ginger. Tubed garlic and ginger will work just fine for this, but if you use the fresh stuff, take a microplane and grate them down. Now that all my vegetables are prepped, I'll move this out of the way and get started on my sauce. Place a bowl over a scale, and to it add 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of soy sauce, 3 tablespoons or 45 grams of gochujang, 2 tablespoons or 42 grams of honey, 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of water, and then 1 tablespoon or 15 grams each of minced garlic and minced ginger. Mix everything in that bowl together until it is well combined, and then you can set this aside until you're ready for it later during the cooking process. Now we can begin stir frying. Place a large skillet over medium-high heat, and to it add about a half of a tablespoon or 7.5 grams of oil. Next, you can add in 2 pounds or 908 grams of 90-10 ground beef. Spread that beef around so it's covering the surface of the pan, and then season it lightly with salt and pepper. Allow this to cook and brown up on the bottom side for a few minutes before you break it up and flip it over. Letting it sit untouched to develop that deep brown crust is what's going to help give us more flavor. If you break it all up immediately when you put it in the pan, it can cause water to be released, and then it's going to steam instead of brown. Now, if you have a skillet big enough to cook your beef and vegetables at the same time, you can do it all in one pan. When the beef is about 90% of the way cooked, push it to the exterior of the pan and create some space in the middle. If your skillet's not big enough, you'll want to remove the beef before you start cooking the vegetables. Once you have your well formed in the center or the beef removed from the skillet, add another half tablespoon or 7.5 grams of oil, and then go in with your onions and peppers. Spread them around to get as much contact with the surface of the skillet as possible, and then a very light sprinkling of salt will help to pull the water out and cook them faster. Be very gentle with your salt addition here because you don't want to add too much. We already have a lot of salt in the sauce that's coming later. After a minute or two, once those onions and peppers have had the chance to brown up a bit, you can stir them around and then go in with your carrots as well as your cabbage. A fun ingredient swap for this recipe is to use kimchi in place of the plain cabbage. It will give you a bit more flavor and a touch of tanginess. Mix everything together and allow that cabbage to cook and break down to become softer. This shouldn't take too long. Once that cabbage hits the heat, it will break down fast. If you had to remove your beef from the skillet, you should add it back here now that everything has had the chance to cook. Next, I'll create another well in the center of my pan to cook the sauce. Dump the sauce into the center and allow it to come up to temperature. You're looking for it to start to bubble and the garlic and the ginger to become fragrant. Once it has reached this point, you can stir it into the rest of the ingredients. Make sure you stir thoroughly so that all the components are covered in the sauce. One final step is to give it a quick taste test. If you like where the flavors are at, you can be done, or if you need to adjust any seasonings, do so as you see fit. Now that the cooking is finished, we can begin the plating process. Take your rice and fluff it up, and then measure out 3.75 cups or 563 grams worth. Again, any extra will probably get used up in fried rice at some point during the week. This recipe is going to make 5 servings, so lay out 5 of your individual meal prep containers and divide the rice evenly between the 5. Align it all nicely on one half of the container and then distribute the beef mixture evenly as well. If you eat all 5 meals over the course of the week, it does not matter if one has slightly more or less food than the other, because the total nutrition will even out in the end. If you want it to be exact, just weigh and measure everything out. The final step is to garnish the tops with green onions if you so choose. And there you have it. Gochujang glazed beef and vegetables. Each serving of this meal has about 572 calories and 42 grams of protein. They will last in your fridge for up to 5 days, and I don't personally freeze any of my meal prep dishes, but lots of people that use my recipes do and report back good things. Once the containers have cooled down and they're done steaming, you can throw on the lids and then move them into the fridge for storage for the week. If you've never meal prepped before, stir fries are a great introduction to meal prep because they're almost impossible to mess up. There's no crazy techniques happening, so if you're not very comfortable with cooking yet, this can be a great place to start. This meal has a good volume to calorie ratio, meaning that you get quite a bit of food for the amount of calories that it has. That can make it a solid choice for if you're trying to maintain a calorie deficit depending on your caloric needs. The written version of the recipe with all the instructions and ingredients listed is published on my website, and that is linked in the description below. Let me know if you give it a try, and if you have any questions about meal prep in general, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. See you guys next week. If you're looking for more recipes to meal prep, check out these two on the screen now.